Do, 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 do.
Doctors and nurses of Reddit, have you ever witnessed a couple have a child that was obviously not the father's? If so, what happened?
Not a doctor or nurse, but my ex-girlfriend delivered a baby while I was in the delivery room. And turns out, it wasn't mine. She was 16. I was 15. All along, I was under the impression that this kid was mine, and it was time to be an adult. Took all the classes, read the books, worked every night and weekend to save whatever money I could as a 15-year-old. I finally get the call she is in labor. So I have somebody rush me to the emergency room. Luckily for her, it wasn't a long labor, only about 6 hours. But there was a complication. The baby came out with the umbilical cord wrapped around its neck. The doctor assured us it was going to be okay, but the nurses were prepping for things to go south. Baby comes out, it's a light shade of purple. And the nurses immediately take the baby and put on the smallest mask you have ever saw, to help it get oxygen, I guess. I was too panicked to ask questions. They state they need to keep the baby on watch overnight. So I stay in the room with the ex. The next evening, baby is back in the room with us, and all seems well. The ex is asleep, and the same nurse from the night before comes into the room and beckons me out. She states that at risk of her losing her job, she has to break some harsh news to me. That kid is not mine. She stated that while at this stage it wasn't obvious, over the next few weeks it would become clear this kid was mixed, and since both of us were white, it was a high probability that it wasn't mine. Cue a mixed bag of emotions, and me promptly waking the ex to get a little clarification. Come to find out, she knew the chances, but was just hoping it was mine because it worked better for her. Apparently, her father was old school racist, and she didn't want to have to deal with that. I left the hospital to collect my thoughts. A few weeks later, I was served with child support papers. One DNA test, and about 6 weeks later, I am 0.0% that kid's father. Wherever that nurse is now, I hope your life is amazing. I understand that you were not supposed to get involved in the personal side of things and keep it professional, but you saved me a lot of additional headache.
Lady is holding a baby that is beamingly white, very pale, no trace of any pigments. The woman starts yelling about how this isn't her baby and they stole her baby. She might not have had full clarity. I mean, she still was in the process of recuperating, just sobbing and freaking out. And the father is just sitting there and looks very confused, because even he's realizing that even if she did cheat, there is no way the baby would be that white. The doctor and nurses are trying to assure her that this is her baby, and the skin usually darkens later. Come to find out, when he called his mom, she pointed out that they have a second cousin who is albino, and maybe baby got that gene. Turns out, that's what happened. Baby was albino.
There comes a time in every man's life, if at all uncertain, he must ponder his stake in procreation. I felt I had claimed my stakes and fulfilled my responsibility of ensuring the furthering of the human race, and now it was time for a vasectomy. I had a vasectomy, and the crazy thing is, sometimes in following our certainties, we find out much more past them, as in this tale I heard secondhand. Who knew that one of the most enlightening conversations I'd ever have in my life would occur during my neutering? So the doctor is taking my marbles from my pouch and starts telling me about this other patient. Guy has 3 kids and came in for the snip because he and his wife decided they were done having children. The doc opened up his sack and found nothing to snip. This guy was born without the ability to have any children. The poor doctor had to explain to him what happened. Imagine finding your life is a lie and then sore from failed surgery the rest of the month? Talk about insult to injury. Well, a story within a story, but still valuable to say the least. You'll be happy to know, unlike our poor friend in the doctor's story, my vasectomy was a swinging success. You can't help but wonder what events followed after in the life of poor Schmo in the doctor's story. I hope whatever he chose, it made him feel more complete, because after my surgery, I definitely do not.
I worked as a lab tech before I became a nurse. We had a set of twins in the NICU that were super early, and the mom was still in the OR getting sewn up from the cesarean. I was drawing baby B's blood while mom wheeled over to baby A's isolate. She was crying and said, "Oh, thank God you're not black. I've been so worried the last 7 months." So, newborn babies, especially when they're born early, are very pink, almost red, so even if a baby was part black, their skin isn't necessarily dark yet. But looking at these babies, it was obvious that they were going to be black. The shape of the face, the texture of the hair, and baby B that I was working on had an intense Mongolian spot. A few weeks later, my NICU nurse told me that the babies were now on a no info status, meaning security alert, can't give anyone information about them, can't refer to them by name, etc. She said there was a huge fight because the mom's husband, white guy, obviously noticed that the babies were half black. And that mom had cheated on him and got pregnant. The real dad, a black guy, didn't realize the mom was even married. Those poor babies. Lots of times as a nurse you see hardship, especially in the NICU, but the saddest part is it's never the baby's fault.
Had a college buddy whose fiancée was pregnant. They were the perfect couple. Both had just over a year with great careers starting out. Everything was butterflies and rainbows. Fast forward to the delivery room. They're in there and out comes a very black baby. He's quite the pale redhead and she's a blonde and blue-eyed Texas girl. He made sure everyone was okay, waited for her parents to arrive, and left without saying a word. He moved all of his stuff out of the house while she was in the hospital, cut off all communications with her, just walked out of their lives in the most stone-cold act I'd ever seen. He told me once that he took solace in the fact that the family had already dropped about $10,000 in the wedding that never happened. They were together for 9 years, and he just left cold turkey. She tried to contact him at his job a few times, but he quickly moved up the ladder and eventually got a job in another city.
Everything behind us in the past. However, our best efforts at fixing our marriage was squandered by my ex-wife's insatiable cheating habits with the same guy she cheated on me with before. This is where the story gets bizarre. What was supposed to be a simple divorce, if there is such a thing, what I thought were formalities held surprises for me. Back and forth questioning began. First question asked was if any children were born into the marriage. We both said no. Second question, if any children were conceived in the marriage. I said no, and she agreed there had been. He then told us he could not grant the divorce since a child had been conceived and paternity had not yet been established. I was being held in question for the paternity of a child I did not conceive, now trapped in 9-month limbo. Wow. After 2 more court appearances and a paternity test, our divorce was granted at the beginning of this month. It was a long journey, and boy, am I glad it is over.
I know a girl who was pregnant with her boyfriend's best friend's baby. It wasn't too surprising considering the 3 of them were always seen together. Seen them at the movies, at the roller rink, in broad daylight. So maybe he should have suspected a little more. I went up to see her once he was born, and he looked just like the friend. There was no question. I broke the news to her boyfriend, and he was absolutely devastated. After further DNA testing, it was confirmed. His parents were heartbroken and super pissed. They had bought the girl everything she needed, including a $500 car seat combination stroller set. She refused to give anything back. She started up a relationship with a friend immediately after their child, and they're still together a decade later. But the kicker for me has always been that the boyfriend and the best friend were next-door neighbors. She moved into his house after coming home from the hospital, so her ex-boyfriend and his best friend had to see them basically every day, raising this child that they believed to be his for the entire pregnancy. I can't even imagine.
She gave him to his dad and rode off. Jay's dad ended up getting married, and everything seemed to fall together perfectly in the new home. And they tried for kids before, finding out his sperm count was too low to even father children. They would later adopt. He sat my fiancé down when my fiancé was 13 and told him the truth and that if Jay wanted to test, they would, but it was up to him. Jay cried and told him, "I don't care about who my father is, you're my real dad." It really goes to show that sometimes real dad isn't interchangeable with biological dad. For Jay, the man who raised him was most certainly his real dad.